born in London, UK, where my parents were. My father had gone to study in London, so I had my early schooling in very fancy named schools. One called Drayton Lodge, and the other was Silverdale Preparatory School. So I was there till I was around 8.5 years old, and then my parents moved back to India in 1971, and we moved to Bombay. So I've been traveling all over the world for my education. So my then I went to school in Bombay for I think 3 or 4 years. After which we moved to Calcutta, and I was in St. Joseph's Convent, where I was in a boarding school. So it was like when we used to read the Enid Blyton stories about Mallory Towers and St. Clair's, and I would think that I would have those enjoyable moments, but we were under the strict vigilance of our sisters there. But I had a wonderful time with my friends, and thanks to social media, now we're still in touch after so many years. I completed my class 10 from St. Joseph's Convent, and then went on to do my 11 and 12 in Calcutta Girls High School. Following that, as is the case with many students, I would say, it was a bit of a confusion as to what I would want to study or what I would like to study. But then I got chance to study chemistry in Presidency College in Kolkata, and Presidency College is one of the colleges that has been the sort of educational institute for many stalwarts and many let's say, I can't find a word here because there's so many that would actually talk about this. That was actually the first step that enlightened me into, because I got into so-called a chemistry honors course, and that's when my love for chemistry actually began. And but in school, when I was in school, just to share a small story with you, I used to keep my father was very particular about very neat handwriting. So even when I was in class 8 or even in 10, we would have these four-lined books or four-line notebooks where I had to like show him a page of handwriting every evening when he came back from office. So, well, that did help in a way, because in school, since my handwriting was neat, my lab notebook was really neat, and I was allowed to wander off when the chemistry teacher used to read out the experiments to the other students. I was allowed to switch on the gas plant. So I used to go up to the terrace, open the door to the gas plant, and switch on this humongous, at that time I was, I think, in class 8 or 9. I used to switch on this humongous machine, and it would like heave up and bellow up and make a huge noise, and that was like really fascinating. It's like said like it was kind of breathing and sprung to life in its own way. So that was really exciting. So that was the I used to enjoy doing all this. I was a bit of a notorious one in school, I must say, and there are many times that I've spent outside the class. But don't tell that to my I didn't used to tell that to my daughter when she was young. But following my path from Presidency College, I went on to IIT Kanpur, where to do my MSc in chemistry, where I had world-renowned teachers. Now that I am a teacher of chemistry, I know exactly the stalwarts that I had the benefit of having classes with. But at that time, when you're a student, you're busy running around and doing other extracurricular activities at time. But I'm still in contact with the teachers still today, and in fact I'm on several committees with them also. So this has been a really wonderful way to sort of pay back what they've given me and what they've taught me. At the time I started my MSc, I got interested in biochemistry. And since in the course that I did, we didn't have any specialized courses in biochemistry, I went on to do what is called a post MSc course, a diploma course in bioscience. And that's actually got what got me fascinated into biophysical chemistry and proteins. And since then, I've been in the world of proteins. I'm still fascinated by it. I get so excited by the whole aspects of protein, and I have wild ideas at times. And based on this, I give a lot of popular talks. like the fascinating world of chemistry, the world of proteins. How do you see them? How do you look at them? And if I talk about a bit about my research, talking about proteins, we look at proteins and how they interact with other small molecules. And the way I look at it is there's this quote by Hippocrates that says, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." So, this is the motto we kind of go by, saying that if you have these dietary polyphenols, for example, drinking green tea, how that would affect you, how they would interact with the proteins that are present in your body. So these are the things that have fascinated me, and we worked on it, on many aspects of this, and how work has been featured in Nature India, in newspaper items, where, just to give you a small idea, there is we have cataract formation in the eye. So, cataract formation means that you have your eye lens proteins actually aggregate. It's called what is called a protein condensation disease. So, we have these proteins that condense, and our idea was to get this protein, because then when you have cataract surgery, these proteins are emulsified and aspirated and taken out and just discarded. So I have a collaboration with an ophthalmologist here. So the day he operates on patients, we bring back this waste protein and then try to see what are the actual modifications that have occurred in the protein that have resulted in this cataract formation. So we have seen modifications, and we have seen, interestingly, for one specific protein there, how green tea can actually combat the effect of oxidation on these proteins. It's quite interesting. I'm now working on hair proteins. There's a lot of waste hair also going around. So I'm working on hair proteins to see whether we can prepare films and gels and so on and so forth for a lot of activities. Apart from this, what I have been involved in is many popular talks. Popular talks, not only based on my subject, but based on English for technical writing, like where you would place a comma in a sentence, where would you pause, and also effective teaching skills. And from effective teaching skills, I also have a few courses in our online NPTEL program. That's the National Program for Technology Enhanced Learning by our Ministry of Education, which has a large number of these courses that cater to many students who would not be able to get the teaching from any institution or some subjects that they would really like to learn. So I have courses there in biochemistry, in fundamentals of protein chemistry, and they have been very well received. And the best part of this is whenever I go to, well, not only in India, when I went abroad also, I had one professor, in fact, tell me that he listened to my courses, my class, before he went to his own class, which was really quite fascinating. And then seeing students everywhere when I go to different places, they run up to me and say, "Ma'am, I take your course. Can I have a selfie with you?" With the mobile phones nowadays. So that has been really, really sort of very inspirational for me, and has taken me forward and kept me young, I must say. Students keep you young. We're trying to prepare films from these proteins, films for so if films, so where we can embed certain material, use them as packaging material, or so we're still working on that. So for the cataract protein also, we have prepared films looking at, because now you have a lot of what is called quote unquote bioelectronics. So we're seeing whether we can actually use these as, that's in the very initial stages now, but we're having fun doing this. Yes, these are the wild ideas which actually my students bear the brunt of, but nevertheless, they get excited. But sometimes I feel I get more excited than they do, because they have to get their PhDs after all, and they would think that getting a wild idea and then trying to go on a path that might not lead them anywhere. But I convince them that this is something that whenever you are doing your PhD or whatever you are sort of focusing on is something that you should really enjoy. So they have sort of got that spirit now, and they also enjoy doing fun stuff that they know that they will lead to their PhD, but at the same time they get to learn a lot of new things, because the students they do not have any exposure prior to this in protein chemistry, or understanding the different aspects of not only experimental. Because when I did my PhD in RPI in New York, upstate New York. So at RPI, I worked on protein interactions, but I worked on the computer. So I had a theoretical aspect there. So for 5 years, I was sitting at the computer doing my PhD. But at that point in time, I decided that when I have a lab of my own, I'm going to have an experimental aspect as well. So my students tell me there are many faculty who have gone from doing experimental work to theoretical work, but they can't name anybody who's gone from doing a theory for PhD and then going on to establish a well equipped experimental laboratory, which I've had the fortunate thing of having a lot of funding from several agencies, where I've been able to establish a well equipped experimental lab, which my students are enjoying doing their PhD and working on their different research problems. And the recognition has also come in the sense where, in a professional manner, where I am now a fellow of the Indian Academies of Sciences in Bangalore. I'm the editorial board member of several journals and on numerous committees. I was also on the Women Scientist Committee, though I do not like this name, Woman Scientist. A scientist is a scientist, but it happens to be the name of the committee. So that has sort of taken me forward, and but it's not come smoothly all the time, I must say. When I started my career. Sure. Well, initially, you can imagine when I joined this institute around 27, 28 years ago, there was a time there we did have women faculty in the department. We always see the representation of women faculty really, really low. Even though we have a large number of research scholars who are women, the percentage of women is still 10% in our department, considering that there are so many women who are doing PhD in chemistry, women doing PhD in chemistry. So at that point in time, I found that, for example, women with an opinion, or women with authority, or they were not taken very, like, not taken very nicely, I would say. But then you couldn't have it. It seemed like you couldn't have an opinion. But times have changed. Like taking instructions from a woman, those things were difficult. To think that I had particular opinion, I had an individual, I had a very individualistic and opinionated, and I could say certain things that probably made sense, but there would sometimes be nobody to back me up in a meeting. But then outside, they would probably say, you know, what you were saying was right, and then why didn't you back me up? So these are sort of things that I have faced, but I have never let it deter me. I have always gone forward and know, and with the knowledge that what I have said or what I am trying to do is, in my opinion, I think is right, and I could probably reason it out with the persons who may be against what I was saying. So it's a matter of compromise, and that's where, probably I would say, the support that I have got, that has been immense. Initially from my parents, I must also say that I was struck with vitiligo when I was just around 14, 15 years ago. I still have white marks on my face. So this was a very, I would say it was a very disappointing time for me at that, because you can imagine that an impressionable teenager, I was just around 14 or 15 at that time, and I had these marks. They were all over my face at that time, and I used to have people stare at me, and that was really, I can't imagine how I must have felt that, because I've got over it. My parents were instrumental in getting me over it. It's saying that there is And there's nothing, no words to describe their efforts and their sacrifice, because they also had to listen to a lot of things, from a lot of people around them, saying that, oh my, she's a girl, she now has vitiligo, she has these white marks, what's going to happen? But it never turned out to be a deterrent at all. And then I met my husband at IIT Kanpur. So, and of course, my husband and in laws, they have been wonderfully supporting people, and they have always encouraged me and to take me forward. And now I have my daughter also. And I used to ask her, do you feel bad that your mother has these marks on her face? Well, she says, no, you're my mom. And that sort of gives you the courage. And now I don't bother about it, but you can realize that at that point in time, it was a difficult phase for me, but I never felt anything. Yes, well, the question of marriage actually never came up in the household. So when it was my husband, actually, he had gone for his PhD that time to RPI, where I got, like, from an acquaintance, he sort of it sort of evolved from there. And then I told my parents that there is somebody who would like, and they were absolutely thrilled about it, because you understand that they didn't make any effort, so to speak, to find somebody for me as a match, and they thought it would just happen, and it did. And then I did my PhD at RPI. Both of us were there at RPI, and then we came back to India. We're fortunate enough for us, but that we got our jobs at the same institution, which is a big problem nowadays with the so-called two-body problem, where you have spouses not being able to get jobs at institutions, like not being able to stay together. So in that way, we were very fortunate, where we could stay on together. No, he's an engineer. He's a chemical engineer in the same institution, in the Department of Chemical Engineering here at IIT Kharagpur. And we have these talks about thought processes, which he would say, oh, that's the thought process of a scientist. So that I may have the idea, but the implementation apparently has to be done by an engineer. So these are the constant things we talk about, where we have ideas and things to take forward from there. But in fact, we've had students together, we have projects together as well. So it's been very rewarding, very rewarding. And having students, I guess this profession, teaching, is probably the most rewarding profession, I would say, because now, wherever I go in the world, I have students wherever. So I went to, like, my husband or myself, we went to Switzerland, we went to the US, we went to, well, I didn't have somebody in Spain, but anyway. But having students, even in the class, they make you feel young. They, because they're so vibrant, and I do not forget the time when I was a student. So there, they would say that, ma'am, you're very approachable. I say, I because the thing is, I don't forget when I was also your age, and I was had exactly the same thought process that you had, and I haven't forgotten that. So they really appreciate that. But it's not that I'm a very lenient teacher. They know to be very strict but fair. And so this is something. And then, for example, when we take our laboratory class for the first year, I'm very strict about time. If it class starts at 9, it means 9. So this, they know I'm very strict about this, so they'll come up with umpteen excuses as to why they are late. And I used to make a note of these excuses. The puncturing of the cycle chain has fallen. And but the best excuse, or one of the best excuses I heard, was then, this student couldn't find his shoes. So because I don't know what happened, but he just couldn't find his shoes, which is the reason why he was late. There have been students who have had they without lab coats. I said, "Where's your lab coat, ma'am? I washed it." I said, "Why did you have to wash it?" They never wash anything, but they would wash their lab coat the day before the lab, and then apparently it started raining, so it didn't dry up. I've also been warden of the hostel here, the girls' hostel. So that was another experience, a very different experience, where it's their place of stay. So, but there were times when the students used to get angry because of the food, because there was this one time when a bunch of students actually came to the warden's room and then surrounded me, saying that why did both the subjis, or both the vegetables, had onion in them. Now this was a question I could not answer. So I said, it's you who decide what to eat, and you who decide, because there's somebody called a mess secretary who sort of works out the menu. And there were other experiences also in trying to work with the different levels of workers there, starting from those who would be the cleaners to the ones who would run the mess. And so it was sort of then the manager and the supervisor. So that was kind of a different kind of experience, where I learned how to, it's not, because you're not dealing with students there, you're dealing with different levels of people, and their work skills and their knowledge, or the way they would appear to you, or the way you would appear to them, is very, very different. For example, I had to take there was a test for these mess workers. I was told that I was on the committee to test them. Now this was a very different committee, and what I had to check was how finely they had chopped the cabbage, how uniformly the sizes of the paneer were that they had chopped up, and how fine the ground masala was for the cooking. Now this was a completely different assessment that I had to do, which was which was fun actually. But then if you look at it from a chemist's point of view, a chemist is always involved in cooking. So that was a fun thing that I also did here. So this plays a valid point. That is what happened. It did actually affect your academic, because if you have to go, we had to go practically every day, spend an hour then signing documents and this and that. And this is something that I had talked about here also, saying that we could interact with the students in an academic fashion, or with our non-academic issues, also talking to them about life in general, about things that they would be interested in, but not checking whether a cabbage is finely chopped up or the masala is ground to a fine paste. That is probably not a job of an academic person, I would say. Definitely not. So because when I was abroad at RPI, we had an office that would take care of the students, manage the hostels. So there, this office was called the Office of Residence Life at RPI, and there also I there was an interview for, we used to stay, my husband and I, we used to stay in the married student housing of the university. And there was a post open for an area manager. An area manager takes care of a set of families in specific buildings. So I applied for the job, and I got the job of an area manager. And my job was to take care of 64 families from all over the world, and give them notices. And if they had any issues with maintenance issues in their apartment, they would call me up, and then I would send it to the actual maintenance person. So that was also a different experience, because and I had a master key to all the apartments. Okay, so anybody, I had one of I remember, she was one of the graduate students there. She was driving off to Boston, and she called me from the road saying, "Area manager." I said, what's wrong?" She said, "I think I left my gas stove on. Could you please go and check?" So then I called up the security, and then the security person, because I didn't want to go barge into somebody's apartment. So then we went. So I've had my share of fun, I must say. So it's been a lovely journey to what I am today. And in the Women's Council here, I was the first chairperson of the Women's Council that we had here, even the first woman member of the Board of Governors at IIT Kharagpur. So I must say, I've achieved a lot, and I like writing also. So I've written general articles, popular articles for. magazines. Then I also wrote the first time I became a teacher, when we had to do what was called invigilation duty, where the students are writing the exams and you're on the other side. So I wrote this article that I called On the Other Side, that appeared in a feature called The Now and Again in the Statesman, that a newspaper here, the Statesman. It appeared in Now and Again. So there, what I had written, that now that I'm on the other side, when I'm not writing the exam, I, you had to while away your time, whether it was 2 hours or 3 hours, and the question was like, how, what do I do all this, because you're just walking up and down. And so I used to, it's a matter of observation. And the observation, so I used to find out, I used to count how many students are writing with their left hand, how many students are wearing spectacles. And then there were some students who would take the pen and actually like whir it around in their like fingers, with very commendable speed, I must say. There was one student I remember, where I wrote in my article also, that had put his pen between his upper lip and his nose, and looks so funny, I must say, like kind of Miss Piggy, with snout and all. So those are observations. Like, you have to make fun of what you're assigned to do in a manner. So that was a duty. It still is an exam duty. So I still walk around and try and engage myself. Well, I guess over the years, I guess when my daughter was small, I had better time management skills. But over the years, as I've grown old, my former students tell me now that they have had children. They tell me, "Ma'am, how did you manage when your daughter was small and you had so many things to do, and we were also there in the lab?" I guess it's again the support system that comes into play, where you know that, okay, if I have a meeting, I know my husband will be there to take care of my daughter, or we have my in-laws or my parents would be here to do that in the initial stages when she needed this. And then again, taking care of myself, I enjoy cooking. I enjoy traveling and playing games. I was sports champion in college. So I tell my students, see, I also in college, I ran a I did long jump, I threw a shot put, and then all these things. So I was this women's champion, which my brother and sister used to make fun of and ask me how many people actually participated. So, and then cooking, I love cooking, I enjoy cooking a lot. So that for me is a relaxation. So if I go back, and then I watch I don't get time to watch a lot of movies, but I watch some TV serials that I'm sort of interested in, and ones with the different ways in which you can just watch any serial you want now. So it's just a matter of keeping yourself engaged, and I guess enjoying yourself and travel. And not exactly. It's just like kind of making something tasty that's going to be edible, but not putting it that way. But there is this course. There was one student who was there, I think, I don't remember the university in the US, that actually had a course on the science of cooking. So that was very fascinating for me, as to why you heat up the oil, like the way we make puri, why you have to sort of slide the puri underneath the oil, and why it sort of puffs up like that. So this is all science in cooking, and it's all chemistry in that sense. So these are interesting aspects that probably when I'm cooking, I don't really think of it that way. But the balance of spices, the salt content, and so on and so forth, they come. And I love watching the cooking shows also, and so how you plate up your dish and things like that, all design and all. Probably I was a bit, let's say, I was a bit vacillating at times, when I would sort of think about too many things to do together, like bite off more than I can chew, kind of. And probably tell myself not to be as confused as I was. particularly when I was after my 12th class once, and then again after my master's, when I was contemplating whether I really wanted to go on for higher studies to do a PhD. But now that I have done, I really do think I did well in this. But after all, at that point in time, I saw a lot of classmates, a lot of batchmates appearing for job interviews. So I decided to sit for a job test. And then, well, I sat for, I think, two or three job tests, and I even got a job. So then I said, okay, getting a job, do I really, that was the job of a management trainee. But then I asked myself whether I really wanted to do that or not. So maybe I would tell myself not to go or follow these different paths, but try to focus on the one thing that has given me what I have achieved so far. Yes. What I plan, I retire in another 4 years. So my plan is to, well, I do have this again another wild plan where I want to sort of engage in educating students at a level to tell them what is out there. In the sense, I have seen that when I go to local colleges to give popular lectures, there was this one girl I remember, that now that you mentioned this, she was standing behind a pillar waiting for other students to finish asking questions, but I was surrounded by them. So once they left, I asked her, do you have a question to ask me? So she said no, it's not academic related. So I said, no, it doesn't matter, you can still ask me. She said, how did you become what you are? So that was sort of a, well, in a way, a very profound question, because she wanted to become, but she didn't know the path to get there. Like, they all are aware that if you do a bachelor's degree, you can then do a master's, but then beyond that, some idea of where you can go and what you can do is something that is has still not percolated down to many regions here. That's what I feel. So with the, but I still didn't get through. But then I decided, okay, if I have to study chemistry, I am going to study chemistry, and well, it worked out fine, because I remember for the part one exam, I topped the in the university. So it was kind of a challenge that I took upon myself. That okay, if I didn't get through that, I am going to do something here. So it's kind of like that.